We are back. After what feels like ages, we return with Coventry versus West Brom. Coventry remain in first position off the back of a great away performance in a first versus second clash, coming away with all 3 points from Stoke after some superb Mason Clark acrobatics. That's 4 wins out of 5 now and 4 points clear from second position, which is a fantastic place to be. However, the next run of fixtures presents a real challenge and the chasing pack will be sure to put up a fight. West Brom, well, they're sat in 14th spot, and whilst they've had some bright spells at the start of the season, they've only managed 4 points in the last 5 games, which is, well, relegation standards, albeit they won't come close to that this season. However, the pressure will be mounting on Ryan Mason. Their team has quality throughout, but they'll need to start getting points on the board. As a Coventry fan, the West Brom game is always a bit of a nervy one for me. However, it's certainly a different West Brom team to seasons gone by. Now into formations. Coventry last out opted for the preferred 4-2-3-1 and fielded arguably our strongest available starting 11. Looking ahead, it's unlikely we'll see any changes to formation, however some potential conundrums for Lampard to consider with Haji Wright and Brandon Thomas-Asante on international duty and some fairly lengthy flights on the way back to the CBS, so they may be feeling a touch jet-lagged. De Silva, not jet-lagged, but he may be feeling heavy-legged from minutes starting for Wales in their game versus North Macedonia. On top of that, we've got this man back. Jack Rodoni is expected to be fit, and whilst we may not see him go straight into the starting 11, it might be a case of potentially building up competitive minutes in them legs, but it could see a fresh look to our attacking build-up in future weeks. West Brom, they've been favouring a 4-2-3-1, however they have trialled a 3-4-3 against Charlton, but leading into this game we're expecting that 4-2-3-1. Some initial changes early on this season, however they're starting to find a settled starting 11. Some potential changes in Mepham and Illing Jr. possible, but plenty of quality in this side, so you could see some changes either way. Now into some baseline numbers. Defensively, we'd like to see a higher line for West Brom, typically holding a lot of the possession and often dictating the play. Offensively, they're fairly advanced. Similar to looking stats here to Coventry. Average possession-wise, this example versus Oxford, and they had a good structure during this game. Advanced back 4, and then the wingers are almost in a 4-2-4 formation there. Shot-wise, 73% of all shots this season come from down the middle and split with 11% in the 6-yard box, 54% in the 18-yard box and 35% from outside the box, so a fairly mixed bag in terms of shots here. Taking a look at their pass maps, well, you can see a good structure in their build-up play and they're clearly comfortable on the ball, but seem to lack penetration in the opposition box, opting for more patient approaches. It's been a common theme for them this season, and whilst they sit in 7th for passes in the final third, they're 19th for passes into the penalty area, so they're a team seeking quality chances over quantity. Touch heat map wise, you'll see West Brom are comfortable keeping possession in that middle third and have less action going on in deeper and more forward areas, a reflection of their intent on the ball. Average possession-wise, West Brom show similar numbers to Coventry. However, we've seen more dominant possession stats in recent games, excluding perhaps the Charlton game. Accurate passes per 90, well, they're top. However, it indicates their possession in 10 in non-attacking areas. Their pass percentage is actually pretty similar to Coventry's. Touches in the opposition box, as expected, they're towards the lower half, with Coventry still way out in front here. Average cross-wise, they're again not really a team that ping a lot of balls into the box with their main route. However, they have opted for it against they face a tougher defence and they can't break through. They will change that up. XG conceded, they're sat in 19th, only 2 spaces behind Coventry. Clearly a team that knows how to keep the chances to a minimum. That's also reflected in their goals conceded stats, so it's not going to be an easy team to break down. Moving up the pitch, their expected goals where they're sat in 20th, with Sheffield Wednesday and Oxford posting better stats here. And well, again, that's reflected in the number of goals they've scored. It comes as somewhat as a surprise as their team is packed with talent and the fans will surely be wanting more. So how can we expect them to play? Well, as mentioned, they set up in that 4-2-3-1 and they're, well, comfortable on the ball. They're happy to build up from the back with structured passing lanes and are happy to invite the press. Surrounding players will seek to find space between the lines whilst forward players stretch defences. Whilst it's not the preferred route, West Brom are happy to go long if they need to mix things up. They're 8th for the most accurate long balls per 90. So it's a challenging one for defenders to get right. Whilst they set up in the 4-2-3-1, it's actually closer to a 4-4-2, with that midfielder joining the attack, keeping the pressure on the opposition defence and playing off one another. It's a similar system to what we see with Thomas-Asante playing in that position behind Haji Wright. West Brom themselves are fairly balanced in their attack and it varies game to game and seems like it's more dependent on what space is available. With that advanced 2-forward system, you'll see different styles of runs, both in behind, stretching defences, and also running short in between the defence and midfield to find the space. If defences don't track, they're wide open. If they stay man for man, well then other players will overload and find space elsewhere. Watching back a few of their games, they really can vary their attack, sometimes by dropping short and other games down the wing, so it really can vary. Without the ball, West Brom aren't a team that will press aggressively, particularly in those final thirds. They're 22nd in for possession won in the final third, in fact. What they will do, however, is sit in a more condensed 4-4-2 formation and try prevent passing lanes, with them typically being a team that's high in possession in the middle third. They'll naturally have a higher defensive line, however, they're not a team that's being caught out by balls over the top. The defence is typically well structured and they can sweep up any attempts at balls over the top. As the pressure builds, West Brom have been strong defensively, and as we saw with their XG conceded stats, largely been very hard to break down. Where they have been caught on occasion is within that midfield area. With an advanced midfielder joining the attack, it can lead the midfield to somewhat exposed. If they press, the space between the defence and midfield grows and they lose structure. Sit deep and they allow the pressure to build. It's a familiar scenario we know all too well at Coventry, and it will certainly be a test for that midfield for both teams. Into Coventry, well, we're expecting that 4-2-3-1, and whilst it may upset a few, I'm not convinced Radoni will be ready to feature in that starting 11. And I actually expect his minutes will be managed in the future weeks. It's likely we'll see Thomas Asante form part of that midfield/attack as he has done in previous games. With the ball, Coventry will no doubt continue with their more forward-thinking direct routes, with Wright potentially check-lagged, but I'd make a case for Sims being a starter in this game. More his size and presence to keep the opposition backline occupied, allowing space for a player like Thomas Asante to drift into. With West Brom being a difficult team to play through, having a player that can be a handful and create space for others is a great option. It also gives us more of an option if we need to be a touch more direct with longer balls. As a team, I'm not expecting us to be dominant in possession, but hold our own, particularly as it's a home fixture. I'd expect a lot of activity down the wings, especially down the right-hand side. West Brom have a very forward players, and this could be an issue for them tracking back, particularly for a player like Milan down that side. Defensively, I'd expect to shape up similar to the Stoke game. I actually thought we had a really good performance defensively in that game, and Stoke have been fantastic at creating chances this season, and well, we minimised that, so it's not an easy task. With West Brom being a possession-based team seeking to control the centre, I'd also expect Coventry to be fairly aggressive in this game and press hard in order to unsettle the West Brom game plan. Into players to watch. For Coventry, I'm going for Matt Grimes, the hub of the team and the key to getting a hold of the ball and keeping it, particularly against a possession-based team. Bobby Thomas, been defensively solid so far this season, but also a real good threat going forward. And with the potential for limited chances in this game, it could come down to his massive head. And finally, Milan. He had an absolute class game versus Stoke, and I think he can provide a similar threat. For West Brom, it's hard not to start with Isaac Price. He's their top scorer with 5, but also 2 assists in there. Great at finding space, but also good on the ball. Certainly a threat. Michael Johnston, 4 assists so far this season, and causes a lot of problems down that wing. Be careful for him cutting inside. I'm also going for Josh Major. Butchered that name. Possibly fair to say he's not been at it this season, but has a lot of great traits for a forward, and he will offer a threat. Into predictions, I think right on the blocks you'll see Coventry fire a few chances away in those first few minutes before settling into a slower affair. International breaks seem to give us that slower easing into games on the restart, and then eventually I'd expect West Brom to try and control that centre of the pitch and dictate the play. I think you'll likely see a fairly swift response from Coventry, looking to press and stretch that game, and West Brom will continue to be patient and look for right opportunities in finding space in between the lines. Coventry, however, will continue with their more direct style of play, with plenty of balls down the right-hand side also. This could present itself as 2 good defences cancelling each other out. That said, both teams have the quality to bag goals, so it could be a tight one. But we will turn to everyone's favourite predictor, the match plot model, who is actually predicting a 2-1 home win, and I'd love to see it. You let me know what you think, and the score will be in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. Until next time, cheers!